Hi, and welcome back after your long experience putting together the radio report that you've just completed. But with that exercise and the other ones up to this point, hopefully this is the knowledge that you've already gained in this class so far. You've learned what is news. You've learned how to come up with a news story on your own, how to develop an idea. You've also learned how to pitch that idea and make it something that can work. You've learned how to go out and find people to interview. That's called story development and contact development. And you've also learned how to put the story together with a storytelling style. It's the style that grabs the listeners and then makes them really want to listen to really what you have to say by the way that you're writing the story. So you have that experience now. You know what it is to be a journalist and how to put together the material and how to write it grammatically correct for broadcast style. So now what we're going to be starting to do this week is learning how to do that same journalism, but do it with video. Okay? Now, a lot of you might be thinking, video, anybody can shoot video, right? I've got my smartphone, I take videos all the time. But there actually is a significant difference between the amateur videographer who takes a camera and goes like this, or their phone and goes like this, and one who has professional training, specifically the professional training of what news video should look like. And so this is what we're going to be focusing on this week, what it actually looks like to have professional quality of video that you're shooting. So let's take a look at some of the equipment we're going to be using. We're going to be using for this week's assignment and next week's assignment. This particular set of equipment will be checked out by me. There will be a sign-up sheet for checking it out. We'll make a time that we will be meeting. I'll check it out to you. You will be responsible for returning it at the time that you said that you're going to turn it. Let's take a look inside this case, and at first what I want to talk about primarily is the camera. Now, what makes this camera more useful than your smartphone for a piece that you would shoot for, let's say, for television news or for a video piece that you might see at a professional level like the New York Times videos, is the quality of the lens and the quality of the audio and the quality of the features that let you manipulate this camera a bit more. So let's just talk about this particular camera. It is a JVC 150Y, and we also have the 150U. What makes it particularly broadcast quality acceptable is the type of lens that it has. It has the 3CCD lens, which is broadcast quality, and it also has an option for multiple audio inputs that we'll be talking about in a minute, and it has functions for adjusting lighting, shutter speed, aperture, those kind of things, and focus. So let's get down to the nitty-gritty of this particular camera, how it will be used and how you can use it. Let's talk a little bit first about the audio functions. Inside your kit, you will find what is called a BNC cable. Let's see if we can take a closer look. You'll see that it has two different sides. One we call the female side and one that is called the male side. This is how you will attach your microphones for the course and when you're using this camera. There are two different types of microphones that can be used with this particular, actually three microphones that can be used with this equipment. One we'll call the handheld mic. The second we'll call the lapel mic. You've probably seen them before. They clip onto somebody's lapel. In the business, they're also called lavalier mics, or in short, people call them lavs, and they're clipped on to the interviewee's shirt, lapel, or tie. And the third type of mic that we have the ability to be working with in this class is what we're going to call the onboard mic. This is the microphone that is attached or sits all the time on top of the camera, and when it is plugged in and it is being used, it picks up the ambient noise. Remember in our last assignment we talked about natural sound. This is the microphone that in general will be picking up the natural sound that you want to use. So how do you attach these microphones to this particular camera? Well, as you see on this side of the camera, you will see that there are two separate inputs for microphones. Input 1 and input 2. To attach them, you simply take You see that's the female end. So you take the male end of the cable and you put it in until it clicks. Okay? When you want to take a microphone cable out, you'll see that there is a small button at the top. You push that button in while you're pulling it out. If you put it in, you hear the clicking sound, and try to pull it out, it won't come out. So you need to be pushing the button while you're pulling it out. Okay? So you have one side of the cable attached at the end of the camera, and then you take the other end of your BNC cable. You see, it's the female end, and you have the male end of the microphone, and you align the holes and the prongs together, and now you have an attachment of a microphone to the camera. Let's take a look at how you would attach the lavalier or the lav mic. Again, you start with the same premise. One side needs to be plugged into the camera. It could go into either input 1 or input 2. You will see inside the lavalier box several items. And one of those items is the battery operated. One of those items is a battery component that will make sure that the mic is working. You will see on one side of this box there are the male prongs so that you connect it male to female. So now this box is connected, but now you need to connect the mic that you're going to be using into this box as well. So you will see with this lavalier mic, on the other end of it is a much smaller BNC style cable, and that will go into this side. You don't want to jam it, you just want to jiggle it until the prongs and the holes line up, and then put it in until it clicks. So now you have a connection from this battery box to the camera, and from the battery box to the microphone. Now, the microphone will not work unless this battery box is turned on. If you see here, and it might be backwards as I'm filming it, you have the off switch, you have a middle line, and then you have another line at the top. You want to push this little button, I don't know if you can see it here, to the top to make it go on. Now the microphone is ready to work. How do you manipulate this particular microphone? Well, you see that there is a clip on one side, and this clip needs to be clipped on to the person's shirt in some way, or their tie or their jacket. But you do not want to see the cable hanging down. So what do you do when you clip it on the person? You ask the person if they wouldn't mind. Oops, I have another mic that I'm wearing. If you wouldn't mind, so now that you have it connected, you want to make sure that you put the microphone as close as possible to the person's mouth. So you want to clip it somewhere high on their collar, so that's not a long distance from their collar to their mouth. But the one thing you want to avoid is having this wire hanging down. So how do you avoid that? Well, it gets a little personal, but you have to ask the person who you're interviewing, give them the mic and say, can you please thread this up your shirt? So they'll put it under the shirt, they'll go down, grab it, and then you can go ahead, or they could do it, and clip the microphone onto the person's lapel, or collar, or shirt, or tie. Then you see you avoid having the microphone sticking out like that. Now when you're using the handheld mic, when it is attached, there are a couple things that you want to remember. The microphone, very much like the digital recorders that we were talking about, have to be in the direction of the person's mouth. These are directional microphones. It can't be sitting on a table nearby to pick up the audio. It's got to be almost at an uncomfortable zone for you. or for them, which means you're going to need to be standing so that the microphone is about this distance from their mouths. That means you have to get somewhat close to them to make it happen. This is much easier to do when you're in a standing situation, when you're interviewing someone standing up. It does make sense sometimes. It's a far enough distance for you to reach your hand out and get someone close to their mouth. In a seated situation, it is probably much easier to go ahead and set up the lavalier mics. Otherwise, you find yourself bending over and stretching out to put the microphone there. So again, I would recommend using the handheld mic in a stand-up situation and the lavalier or the lapel mics when you're interviewing somebody when you're sitting down. So once you have all the microphones set up, how do you know that they're actually working? Well, there's a couple of ways. First, what you would like to do is go on this side of the camera where you see the handle side. On the handle side, just above the handle, there's a little opening where you could put an earphone jack. I recommend keeping your earphones with you at all times. Test the mic by tapping on each one individually. Listen to make sure you hear that tapping sound. If for some reason you're not getting the audio like you're supposed to be doing, I want to point out to you that there are some functions and some settings here that you can make sure are in the proper place. So to make sure that you're getting your audio the way that you want it, you want to make sure that you have this one down on input 2, that you have your audio input 1 at the bottom where it says mic, and input number 2 in the middle section where it says mic. Now we have the audio figured out. Let's talk a little bit about how you're actually going to record what you have in front of you in your camera. And to do that, you're going to record not on videotape, but actually onto a memory card. Hopefully you've all seen memory cards these days. The memory cards in this camera have 2 slots that they can go into, slot A and slot B, and I'll talk in a minute how you know which one you should have it in. But let me talk about the memory card that you want to use for a second. For video shooting, you will need to have an SDHC card that is either class 10 or class 6. How big of a card should you get? Well, I recommend at the very least 16 gigabyte card. If you're a type of person that likes to ask lots of questions during an interview or shoot lots and lots of video, then I would start out with a 32 gigabyte. After you've shot one story with a card, you can always delete the material on here and use it again, but I would say you want to try and get everything on one card if at all possible. Okay? So for this particular camera, you would set up your card by sticking it in the slot. Just have to push it in until it goes in. When it's time to get it out, you just push it out and it'll come out. Okay? This, you could, if you have 2 cards, put one in slot A and one in slot B, and once slot A is finished up, this camera will automatically take you to the recording on slot B. If the camera tells you, after you've opened it and started working with it, there is nothing in slot B, you can manipulate this button here. You see the A and B, there's a button. Push it and tell it that you just want it moved over there. If it's still telling you that there's nothing in the slot that you want to shoot on, let's say you have only one card in there and it's in slot B, and it's telling you there's nothing in slot A, then what you want to do is just take it out and put it manually in slot A. And in a minute, we'll be taking a look at the inside of the camera where it's giving you those directions. One more point that I wanted to make about the functions that are available on this particular camera. This camera does allow you to use a manual zoom and a manual focus and manual lighting, but it most probably is your best bet, and this is what I'm going to recommend for everyone using these cameras, to leave it on automatic. So you will see a couple of buttons here, AF and MF. That's automatic focus and manual focus. Try to leave it on automatic focus at all times. And this is full auto and full manual, depending on how many times you push it. We'll take a look inside to show you how it shows up on the lens to tell you which one you're actually on. You want to try at all times for this class to remain on automatic focus and full automatic functions. One other control that I want to talk to you about on the camera itself on the outside is the power. How do you actually get it to work and to turn it on? Well, to keep this battery operated, you need to keep a battery in it. Let me show you the battery itself. Okay, the battery is pretty small, not too heavy, and what it needs to do is slide up in the inside. You'll notice some gold points there and similar gold points on this side, so you want to match them up, get them lined up, and then push it to the side, and you should hear a click. How do you get the battery out? You'll notice that there is a button right there. Push the button and slide the battery out. So again, slide it in until it clicks. And to take it out, you push the button above it and slide it out. Now this battery will probably last, if it's fully charged, about an hour, maybe 2 hours of straight shooting, okay? Or straight use with it turned on. When you've run out of battery power, you want to do two things. One, you want to make sure you charge it. Now in the bag, in your kit, you're going to have a battery charger. Again, you match up the gold sides to the gold sides. You slide it in until it clicks. And while I don't have this plugged in right now, when it is plugged in, you'll see a green light here that is blinking, blinking, blinking. When this is charged sufficiently and is full, this green light will be still and won't be blinking, but the green light will be on. If the battery is totally discharged, we're talking many, many hours of charging until it's filled back up, maybe an overnight type of thing. Okay, so give yourself many hours for doing that. If you're at a location and you run out of battery power, the only thing that you can do at that point in time is take out the electrical charging component, which you'll also find in your kit. It has an input that looks like this, and that will go into the back of your camera. You'll see where it says DC. You open that up and you plug that in. Now you've plugged this into one side, the other side will have to be plugged into an outlet, which means the only distance you can move once you're working off of DC power is from the distance from where your camera is to where the electrical output is, which means you might have to move your interviewee closer to you to get closer to the plug. Something to keep in mind, so you want to try to shoot as much as possible using the battery that comes with it. It gives you a lot of more flexibility. So the first thing that you want to think about when you're working on this is that you need to have the lens open, because if the lens is closed, you're not going to see anything. If you look inside right now, you can see the lens is totally closed. So to open the lens, there is one more little lever. It's right here on the back of the lens that you need to lift up to open it. So right now, if you see it is open, and when you're all done shooting and packing things away, you want to make sure that it is closed. Okay, so again, we open up the lens, and then the next thing that we want to do is turn the camera on. Okay, so I don't know if any of you have actually held on to a video camera before, but just in case you haven't, your hand needs to slip in under the leather strap so that your thumb is available to move these functions and these controls. This little red button, we'll talk about in a minute. This is the record button that you want to be able to hit with your thumb when it's time to record, and hit it again when it's time to stop recording. And on this particular system, you'll see that there is the on-off button. It has a little blue button in the middle. And when you want to turn it on, you want to hold the blue button in and turn things to the middle. Okay, so this is off, and I put my finger on the blue button and pull this up to the middle position for on. You could look into the viewfinder to see what things look like once it's on, but I highly recommend that instead you use the little monitor on the side, the LED screen. And the reason that I suggest that is because when you start doing work on your own, you're not always going to be looking into the monitor this way. At some point, you might need to see what things look like with the camera pointed at you. And if that's the case, all you need to do is turn the little screen toward you. It makes it much easier to see what's going on this way, as opposed to trying to look in the viewfinder to change your controls. One additional element that you want to keep in mind when you have your hand in the ready position, you have the thumb on the button that can turn the camera on and off, and also on the record button. Your fingers now are open and available to work the zoom in and out element that's on the top. It may be difficult to see right now, but there is a W on the left-hand side of the button, that's for widening the shot out, and a T on the right, that's for tightening the shot up. So essentially it would look like this. So you have your hand inside the strap, your thumb is in the back, your finger is here, going T for tight, and W for wide, which would zoom in if you're going forward, and zoom out if you're going backwards. Okay, let's say we've turned our equipment on and we want to take a picture of the computer in front of us. So what are we seeing through our particular monitor on our camera? What you see down here is the amount of battery that you currently have left. So while it's in the green, it's still not fully charged. That means we've been using some of it. At some point it will turn from green to yellow, meaning things are getting a little bit of concern, so you're going to be running out of battery soon, and when it gets to red, you have very little time left. You see up here you have an A and a B. Those are your two slots for your memory cards. You see you have an hour and 55 minutes left to shoot on the memory card in slot B, but you have 0, 0, 0, meaning you have no space left in slot A. On the top, on the left, you see something that says AF, that's automatic focus. We talked about that earlier. You want to make sure you leave the setting on automatic, both automatic focus and full automatic. Again, how do you manipulate those things? If you turn to the side of the camera, you will see the buttons down here, automatic manual focus and full auto. You want to keep things on automatic. And the last thing that you want to check before you start recording is that you have your audio levels exactly where they need to be. See here we have the onboard microphone going into input number 1 and the handheld microphone going into input number 2. So to make sure that both of them are working, we take a look at the two monitors at the bottom of the screen. This would be the one on the bottom is the handheld microphone. And if I tap on the onboard microphone, you'll see channel 1 lighting up. So you want to make sure that those lines at the bottom are lighting up to at least the mid-ground of that line. As long as you see the green lines moving, you know that the audio is getting in there. So you can either check by looking at the green lines and or by listening on your headphones as we discussed earlier. Another setting I want to talk about with this camera is lighting. In general, you should not have a problem with lighting as long as you keep all the settings in automatic. Now this particular set of equipment will not come with an onboard flash or an onboard light of any type. But this lens should have enough light for you to shoot in daylight and shoot in a room where the light is on, or shoot outside even when it's cloudy or light outside. You want to remember, always, 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 very important, never shoot somebody in a light situation with the light behind their head. This camera will always adjust for whatever is the brightest. If it adjusts for the light outside the window, the person's face in front of that window will be black. So always you want to make sure that the person is facing the window and not having a window behind their head. Similarly, if they're outside, you always want the sun shining on their face, never with the sun behind their head. Now that said, if you still find that you get into a situation where it is really just too dark and you're seeing only darkness in your lens, then you are not going to have video that's acceptable to use anywhere. There are a couple of adjustments that you can make. There's adjustments with this camera that will allow you to lighten up the picture. I want to reiterate, I want you to keep everything on automatic. If you find a moment where no matter what you do, it won't work, then there are a couple of adjustments that you could try to make. Then you can take it to manual. When you push that button, the full auto button, it can either be on auto or manual. Once you have it on manual and you want to adjust the lighting, then you go into the back of the camera where you see it says iris, shutter, AE+, and adjust volume. You will hold the shutter button. See if I can do this, the shutter button, and adjust the volume control at the same time. If you hit that and move this up and down, then you should see the screen brightening up. Okay, so again, this can only be done in manual mode, and it should only be done in circumstances where there's nothing else that you have available. Again, you go to the back of the camera where you'll see the settings on the left-hand side. You have to hold in the button and adjust the spindle at the same time to effectuate the change. And you want to make sure that you go back to the automatic mode. If you don't, you're going to see some crazy things going on in your lens after you've adjusted the lighting. So I'm going to go back and hit full auto. Okay. And now we're pretty much ready to start shooting. To do that, as I mentioned before, you remember, you put your hand in on the leather side. You make your thumb available to push that red button. When you do push that button, you will see that you have insufficient space on one card, and you want to tell it to go to the B card. And you hit record with your thumb, and that will come up. So again, when it's time to record, your hand goes inside the strap, your thumb goes on the red button. When you push the red button once, you will see the record showing on the screen. That means you're recording. When you're done shooting the particular segment that you want, you hit the same button again, and that will take the record notation off of your screen. So you know that when you see that come up, you are recording, and when you see it go off, you're no longer recording. When you set it up, it will look something like this. You might find after it's set up that you really need it a bit taller than it is. You probably want the height of it to be about the same height as the person that you would be interviewing. So you want to raise this one up, let's say. So once you have done that, you again just come back, open the clips, raise it up, and then buckle the clip back up. And you'll do that so that all three sides are even. Okay? How do you know that they're even? Well, there is on this particular system a leveling device. And with all level devices, to get it balanced, you just need to move things around until the bubble on the inside goes inside the circle. So how do you manipulate this so that you can get the bubble in the circle? Well, you have the main device, which is down here, that you would unlock and jiggle the head around until the bubble goes in between the lines. Once you have gotten to that point, then you lock it down. There are other elements of this tripod that you can manipulate with locks and unlocks. The tilt bar will allow you to, once you have it in a position something like this, you will lock it into place. Tighten that and lock it. And once you have it locked into place, the tilt bar will allow you to move the camera left and right, and also tilt up, down, and up. Now, if you want better access and smoothness with doing the tilt, on the other side of the tripod is a lock that will hold in place the ability to tilt up and down and side to side. The lock would be right here. If I loosen this, I have better access to going side to side and up and down. If I were to lock it in place and tighten it, it would be very difficult for me to move this side to side. So again, you have movements that you could make with this tripod underneath with adjusting the balance, and on the side with allowing it to tilt and pan. Okay, so the last thing that you need to know is how to put the camera on top of the tripod. This would be the slider component that you see on the top of the tripod, and this on the bottom of the camera is the slider that would go into it. So basically you want to line them up together and slide the camera into the slider part of the tripod. Once you've done that, you want to quickly make sure it's secured, because at this point you can see it's still sliding back and forth. And you will notice on the tripod that there is a lock on the side and the bottom. You want to tighten that lock right away. And this lock will either allow this to be loose, or if you adjust it properly and quickly and tighten it, you will tighten the camera so that it cannot move any longer. Now that you have the camera attached to the top, you again would open up, get your legs to the height that you want them. You can readjust the legs at this point, and then go back and work again on leveling the camera to make sure that it's the appropriate place that you want it. When you're ready to take it off, you'll unlock the locking component in place, and you see it's almost ready to come off, but there's one little step more that needs to happen. It's got a double locking component on it, and if you turn it around on the other side, you'll see a red button. If you push that button in, it will allow you to take it off the rest of the way. And now it's time to put the equipment away. When you've completed shooting, you need to pack up all the equipment properly. So let's start with the tripod. The first thing that you would do is fold up the legs and make sure that the tilt arm is in place right next to the legs. And tighten that in place. And you can go ahead and stuff it back into its case properly and make sure you zip it up. If it doesn't seem to fit in properly, that probably means that the legs haven't been made to their smallest amount. You should zip it up and carry it back like this. As for the rest of the equipment, remember that the lens needs to be closed before you pack it up. You turn it around, make sure that the lens is now closed inside, and then when you're putting it into the backpack, make sure that the onboard microphone is facing up. You don't want it smooshed into the bottom of the backpack. So you want it to go in like this. The DC and AC charging devices should go into a pouch. Tie it up and put the pouch in the backpack. The handheld microphone also needs to go into its pouch, zipped up and into the backpack. The cable for audio should be rolled up nicely. Doesn't have to be professionally, but so that it's not flapping around. Roll that up, put it in a section. And with the lavalier mic, the first thing that you want to do is make sure that it goes into the off position, because you don't want to leave the next person without battery for this microphone. You separate the bottom portion. You put the box inside of its case. You again very nicely wrap up and wind this cord. Place that in its place. The microphone in its place. Close that box and tuck it in as well. And as long as you have your power elements, your handheld mic, your microphone, your audio cable, and your lavalier mic inside of the backpack, you're all set to go. Just close it up, zip it up, and bring it back with you to class or to the check-in location in Varner Hall. Okay, so now you know how to set up the equipment and you know how to pack it up. So the next thing that we need to learn how to do is actually shoot the video so that it works in the format of news video. We're going to take a look at what it looks like inside the lens when you're shooting the appropriate video that you need for a news story. We'll be doing that in the next video. I do want to give you a heads up so that you can pace yourself this week. After you complete the next video, you'll see at the end of it the actual assignment that I'm asking you to do for this week. That involves signing up for equipment, signing it out, and shooting a series of types of shots that you will be required to do for future stories. You're going to need to sign out the equipment, do the shooting, and send me a copy of the video that you've shot, and that will be due by Sunday at midnight. So take a break for a second, process all that you've learned just now, and I'll see you in the next video where we're going to learn how to be video journalists.